Breaking news from the NFL as the New York Giants have let go of head coach Brian Daboll, and I agree with them in one part. Someone should have lost their job for this 2-8 start. I just don't think it should have been the coach. Let's talk about the breaking news from the National Football League. It shouldn't really come as a surprise when a 2-8 football team fires their coach, but this one, I guess it didn't catch me off guard, but that doesn't mean I agree with it. As the news comes down that Brian Daboll has been fired by the New York Giants, and again, I understand coming on and saying, look, they're 2-8. Why are they firing their coach? That's a tough hill to die on. You know, that's a tough one to really plant your flag and go, no. This was a mistake that the coach who has won 9 games since making the playoffs a couple of years ago, that's the coach that should stick around. Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. I fully understand it. That being said, it doesn't mean I agree with it. I think this is a mistake from the New York Giants. It hasn't been good, obviously. But when you look at what Daboll's strengths are, he is an offensive-minded coach through and through. Well, okay, I would suggest he's gotten a lot out of Jackson Dart. Now, a lot of that is Jackson Dart, right? But the biggest key for the Giants right now is the progression of their young quarterback. And I would suggest, not that he has been doing this grandiose thing that's like, okay, well now, this is why Jackson Dart's going, but he has helped, and he has got that kid going in the right direction. So to me, that buys you time. To me, that gets it done. But also, like, Cam Skattebo was everything you could have thought Cam Skattebo would be. When he gets talented players on the offensive side of the football, he gets the most out of those talented football players. So I feel like there are times where you will look and, like the Titans, Callahan's kind of an offensive coach. The offense wasn't doing well, so you fire the coach, right? Same like defensive coach Robert Saleh, defensive coach with the Jets. Defense sucks. Okay, we'll fire the coach. But when you have a coach that's coming in focusing on the offensive side and the players that you want to see progress are progressing on the offensive side, then I feel like you kind of got to keep that guy around, don't you? So I don't understand this even a little bit. To me, this is a roster construction issue through and through. It is not a coaching issue. I don't know what this guy was supposed to do with Russell Wilson throwing to Wan'Dale Robinson at the beginning of the season with Tyrone Tracy in the backfield. Like, I don't know what he's supposed to do with that. And then they lose to the Bears. And there have been some management things that you don't love from him. Schefter put out the tweet that they have blown, I think it's 4 double-digit leads on the road. I would suggest that's a defensive problem, not necessarily on the offensive coach. But I don't think that any of this, he's not blameless, but I don't think you put this at the feet of the coach, unless he is the one who is going out there and like walloping Jackson Dart in the head with a chair, or he is the one saying, no man, power through and run over every tackler you can find so that we can test you for 4 concussions in your first 6 games as a professional. Then if he's doing that, then you fire him. If he went out before the game and put Malik Neighbors in a sharpshooter so that his leg exploded, okay. If he secretly went out and put Cam Skattebo in an ankle lock before his foot went sideways, then fine, yes, fire him. But he was getting the most out of the players that he was brought in to get the most out of, and they all got hurt. I don't see this. I don't see this at all. The thing he was really bad at was picking a defensive coordinator, obviously. But even then, I don't think they've been given a whole lot of weapons on the defensive side to work with. The pass rush being subpar is surprising. That, like with Abdul Carter not really being what you thought he could be in this first year. Anyway, I'm not saying he's a bust by any stretch of the imagination. It just hasn't been as dominant as you would have thought it would have been. But that has been kind of the failing. And it does kind of show at least how my perception of coaches has changed. Because you look 15, 20 years ago, if a coach has a pretty big issue on the defensive side and they're losing games, it's still the coach's fault. But we do kind of have an understanding now of the different roles that these coaches have and everything like that. And maybe that is something that should change, where coaches need to oversee the whole thing of the coaching and not just well, I'm an offensive coach, so I'm just going to stick to the offensive side of things. We saw this week Dan Campbell getting some work on the offensive side as well, and then they run for a bajillion yards in a good performance for the Lions. But it is kind of interesting to me how that's kind of evolved, where there's problems with his football team on the defensive side, and I put none of it on him at all. But really, I put none of the issues in New York on the coach at this particular time. I really don't. We'll get to where that blame should go here in a second, but do want to remind you guys that we talk a lot of fantasy football on this show. If you want to get your fantasy football questions in, you can do that throughout the show or in the comments of any of the videos. Going to go really hard on fantasy the next couple of days. Today is more news and notesy type of thing with obviously all this stuff has a bit of a fantasy lean to it, but if you have any fantasy football questions or thoughts, you can get them in. And let me know what you need in Monday Night Football tonight. Your boy in the Vampire League could get another win as I'm starting to build a juggernaut here, but we need 9 points from Jordan Love to get that done. So where does the blame fall in New York now? I think it is obvious that it's on Joe Schoen, who I don't think has done a very good job at all. Took over this team after the 2022 season, at which point he gives a bad extension to Daniel Jones that the entire world knew was just an absolute mirage that the coach got the most out of, by the way. Since then, not great. They've won, I guess this year included, at 2-8, that would be 11-33 as the general manager. And look at the draft history. When he starts out, the first pick he makes is Kevon Thibodeau, who goes 5th overall in 2022. Solid. Guy's been great. And you look at a couple of the players drafted after him, there isn't like there's a big dud or anything there. But then 2 picks later, this is where it really is devastating for them, is that they picked Evan Neal, who is a guard that they took 7th overall, and he's been an absolute bust. He has played, I don't think he's played a snap for them this season. And you look in this draft, and it's not like the next bunch of picks were all offensive linemen who are going to the Hall of Fame. It was actually a run on really good wide receivers, and then you get into the Cincinnati talk of, do you want the weapon or do you want an offensive lineman? Well, the Giants came away with neither, and 3 Pro Bowlers were drafted after Neal, that being Tyler Smith, Tyler Linderbaum, and Cam Jurgens. Then in the second round, they selected Wan'Dale Robinson. If you want to go receiver there, fine. But that's 8 picks ahead of Jurgens. And so when you look at some of the receivers that were going in that spot and kind of comparing it, they end up coming out of this with Evan Neal and Wan'Dale Robinson instead of what they could have had, hindsight 2020, but instead of what they could have had with Cam Jurgens and Jamison Williams, I believe, was going high in that draft. But even if you wanted to go receiver in the second round, right after Jurgens, George Pickens gets selected, and Alec Pierce goes. If we were to have a draft right now of the 3 players that we just talked about, Robinson, Pickens, or Pierce, I would suggest Robinson's going 3rd pretty comfortably. So that one didn't go great. 2023, they draft Deonte Banks with the 1st round pick. 32 starts for them in 3 years. That's all right. Trying to shore up things on the defensive side, except according to PFF, who, they rank him 104th out of 106 defensive backs in the National Football League this year. Now, PFF gets things wrong, but usually the margin of error isn't the entirety of the position. So that's a miss there. In the second round, they go offensive line again with John Michael Schmitz. He's 19th out of 34 on PFF for centers. Now, the next 2 drafts, they nail it, right? Neighbors comes in, Tracy comes in, Scadaboo comes in, Abdul Carter, and Jackson Dart. But this is where, again, I feel like the blame is being misplaced because he's got a bunch of fun new toys that the offensive-minded coach has been able to get the most out of, relatively speaking, due to injury, but he's been able to get the most out of them when they have been playing. The issues that this team has had have been they've absolutely failed to assemble anything that looks like an NFL offensive line, and they have completely failed at building a defense. The only thing that they have been able to do through the draft effectively is bring in offensive weapons that the coach who you just kicked out the door was getting the most out of. So if I'm the Giants and Joe Schoen comes to me and he's saying, all right, got to fire the coach, time to do it. The general manager, or if I'm the owner, I'm looking, oh, well, that's great because you know what? You can, but I accept your resignation. Oh no, I didn't resign. Oh, that's so weird because I have it typed here. You haven't signed it yet, but I have it typed here that you've resigned. That's so That's so interesting how that just fell onto my lap. Because he'd be gone. There would be no question about it that he would be the one who is walking out the door. Again, Daboll is not blameless in this entire thing by any stretch of the imagination. Not even close. But I don't know what he was supposed to do. Like, I think if you got the absolute best case, if you were able to go into Madden and not even just rank everyone up to 99, but just guarantee me health and guarantee me that I can get each one of these guys to the absolute peak of their abilities. What are they? 4-6 instead? The game yesterday was winnable against the Bears, but the Bears are a better team than them. I like the win against the Eagles. I don't know how you get rid of a coach after that. I don't know where the game is that the coach was the problem for them. Trying to pull up their schedule here really, really quick. Like I said, I know that they have blown some leads. And again, it's not standing up for a coach who went 2-8 is a difficult hill to die on, and not necessarily one that I'm going to die on. But okay, so they lost to the Bears. Bears are a better football team than them, but it was close. That sucks. Lost to the 49ers. 49ers are better. Lost to the Eagles. Eagles are better. Lost to the Broncos. Maybe don't give up 33 points in the fourth quarter, and at some point, like some kind of complimentary something has to help you out in that game, but still, lose there. That, like, Broncos are a better team. Beat the Eagles. Lost to the Saints. That's one where you can be, okay, what are we doing here? But they beat the Chargers. Lost to the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Chiefs are a better football team than them. Lost in a wild shootout to the Dallas Cowboys in just an absolute crazy game where you're hoping your defense comes up with a stop. Cowboys are better. And Commanders. Commanders are a better football team than them. So aside from the Saints, where is the game that Daboll completely failed and cost his football team a game? I don't see it. I see a roster that is not up to the standards of a competitive team in the National Football League, and a guy continuing to get opportunities to build that up. So, yeah, mistake made, I think, with the New York Giants here today. What do you guys think? Am I completely out to lunch? Are you going to take the brave stance of saying, no, the coach who was 2-8 should be fired? Because that, not going to be a tough argument to make. I will suggest that. But where does the blame kind of go for the Giants? And where do you think Daboll ends up next? I have a buddy who, in some of these chats, who's a Titans fan. And I said, so next Titans coach? I wouldn't mind that. I would trust him with Cam Ward and kind of the next progression of this football team. If I'm Daboll, I maybe want to go to a bit more of a solid situation instead of back-to-back fixer-uppers. And now all of a sudden I'm the offensive coordinator at East Lansing Tech. But I would take him on the Raiders. I don't think coaching's been the problem. I think, again, roster construction there, but I think there's a good coach there. And I think that is the type of an offensive mind that I would still want around a young football team trying to build a bit of a foundation to help out a young quarterback. So I think Titans makes a lot of sense. But where do you think he ends up next? And who should the Giants go with for their next coach to try to turn this thing around? If you're enjoying the conversation, why not just share it with some other people? Want to get more people talking in these things. Want to grow all the channels that we're streaming on today. Love talking with everyone who is here. Toxic, always a blast chatting with you. And everyone else, I just want you guys to have more people to talk with while we're doing this. So share the video out with some friends and help grow this channel as we continue to push here in the NFL season.